It's Tuesday, September 27th. Coming up live on The View. They're bearing all in Hot Topics. From Nancy Grace's wardrobe malfunction on Dancing with the Stars to whether New Jersey Governor Chris Christie is too big to be president. And how one Starbucks customer got a grande diss on her coffee cup. Then, the Red, White, and View is proud to welcome the Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden, who's revealing how he and President Obama plan on staying in the White House with approval ratings down and Republicans on the rise. Plus, 17 years after his landmark Violence Against Women Act, the Vice President is being joined by victims of shocking abuse who are on a crusade to stop the disturbing rise in teen girls trapped in abusive relationships. All that, Hot Topics and more, coming up live on The View.
Now, today we are honored to welcome a very special guest, Vice President Joe Biden. We like the fact that
this is his third time with us.
Really?
Yeah.
That's kind of
he
fantastic.
Likes us. He really likes us. And Joy wore a skirt today.
I did wear a skirt.
I must say.
I did not even notice.
I wore one for Cheney, too, which says something right there, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're a little political.
Bipartisan.
I just want to tell people, because this is such an interesting show, that the Vice President is here to talk about violence that teenagers are experiencing. He had a Violence Against Women Act, and this is about teenagers. And any parent, any kid, this is very important, not to mention the fact that we're delighted and we can ask him a few political questions as well.
Just
a couple. Yeah.
Now, Barbara, you had I hate to say it, but
the B word.
You had a birthday.
Yeah.
over the weekend. I know. I just broke into a sweat.
Yeah, you don't know what I did.
Did you do anything special?
Well, as you know,
yes.
I never mentioned it last week.
Right.
It was on Sunday. I figure on Sunday nobody notices. It will go away. It's like every 4 years, like leap year. I'll celebrate.
Right.
And I was getting away with it. I didn't want to discuss age. I didn't want to discuss birthdays. But Patrick Ignazzi, our senior producer, whose days are now numbered, tweeted me.
Yeah,
well,
that's how I found out. Through Twitter.
Yeah, then I heard from you.
Yes.
That's what happened. Then I heard from all of you.
Evil.
And then
I called you with the kids running around.
Oh, yeah, the kids were screaming and so on. But I walked through the park today. Even the dogs wagged their tail. It's loving. But also, I mean, truck drivers, people on the street, whatever.
That's nice.
Hey, Mom, happy birthday!
Happy birthday! It's very.
You get a lot of
flowers.
Flowers.
I got so many flowers. People thought I was getting married, like the two of you. I said it looks like a funeral home. Somebody said, "Couldn't you say it looks like a wedding?"
Yeah.
I do want to thank everybody. And it does make you feel loved. Because it was one of these days when I got up and all I could think of was all the mistakes I'd made in my life.
Right.
Ever happened to you?
Yeah.
By the
I
end
thought
of
you would say, looking at us like
I know
exhibit A, B, C.
all the mistakes I've made in my life.
No, you were part of the good things.
Every day.
But by the end of the day, I felt very blessed. So I will just leave it at that.
You know who was not blessed? Let me tell you. Now, if you were watching Dancing with the Stars last night, you might have wondered what the hell was going on during Nancy Grace's performance when the camera suddenly switched to audience members sitting there like zombie people. Look.
Oh, yeah.
Here we go, just help you out there a little bit. On the European version, that would be perfectly fine.
Now, apparently, what the live audience saw that people watching at home did not see was that Nancy Grace had a wardrobe malfunction during her dance, and that cameras had to quickly cut away until Nancy put everything back in order. But I figured they were struck blind for like a minute the way they were sitting there. They were like,
Didn't they look like...
I mean, that's how they looked.
But, you know, the director has a choice, and so he had to nip it in the bud. You know what I'm saying?
It's so funny, the cutaway, Sal and I were watching it, and I thought it was a still photo, but apparently they were saying, would they do cutaways when they, you know, when something happens, but they need to get a cutaway of people clapping, because
right.
I don't think Nancy Grace is going home.
Oil painting that we dread.
Yeah, it's like oil painting, but I think that kind of hurt.
But her dancing was okay.
Yeah, she did good. She
Ricky
did good.
Lake was good.
Ricky Lake also.
Chaz didn't do so well.
No.
Yeah,
he sort of
Chaz is
stumbled a little
knee.
bit.
Well, he's injured. I mean, I can imagine training with an injured knee. You could hear that popping when they showed him behind
Well, they
the
showed,
scenes.
yeah, his knee was cracking.
There he is.
Yeah.
And he was in a lot of pain when he was dancing. So I think Chaz is on there for the long haul as far as the voters and the judges. I don't know if Chaz's body will hold up in this competition. We're really hoping.
How crazy it looks when there's no music, isn't it?
She's just running.
Well, how did everybody else? So everybody else did okay, and
J.R. Martinez from All My Children. You go, baby.
I thought Hope Solo was great again.
Yeah, Ricky Lake got the highest
Ricky Lake
scores.
was actually, she had a phenomenal performance.
In 3 weeks, she's already lost 12 inches.
I don't know what I thought you were about to say. So let me move off of this because that scared me for a minute.
It's nice to see
Yeah.
someone who isn't skinny.
I'm telling you,
Yeah.
real woman.
Well, you know.
Go, Ricky.
That's
Go,
right.
Ricky.
That's right.
Go.
So
You're next.
Wait, that's a good way to lose weight. Dance
what
with
they
the
say.
It's a way
sun.
to lose this job because it's in L.A.
wow.
All right, well then.
Now that it's awkward, well,
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, we're gonna go and come right back because we've got more hot topics.
Do something well.
New Jersey Governor Chris Christie is making a big speech at California's Reagan Library tonight, which is stirring up rumors once again that he's going to run for president. Can you see him as president?
Can I say, you say no? Okay. Why not?
Oh, wow, did they say
I
fat?
heard that, and you're right.
What did she say?
I can't repeat it, but she's right.
Okay, let me just say a little bit about it. What you said is because he's hefty.
Yeah.
But different words.
Hefty.
But look. This is a man who is, you know, the Republicans seem to be very upset because they have no front runner that they think is going to win an election. So they have been asking Chris Christie. He's got a lot of money behind him from rich Republicans. And he has said, I'm not ready yet. He's got 4 children. The youngest is only 7. The oldest is 17. But he cut taxes in New Jersey.
he didn't.
Well, he says he did.
He did not.
No tax,
Go to
lean
school.
government.
his bottom line is his
Sorry.
approval rating just jumped 10%. He went from 44 to 54 because he was hard on unions and he was hard on a lot of other areas.
Yeah.
He is, and I don't think the Republicans are so much concerned right now. Actually, I think most people, I think there was a recent poll that just came out that said Americans believe that any Republican right now has a great shot against President Obama. Now, I do think Mitt Romney is the strongest candidate, but Chris Christie offers something that, say, Rick Perry and Bachmann don't.
Krispy Kremes.
Hold on. Wait a minute. Imagine this conversation about an overweight female candidate. We would be beside ourselves.
We wouldn't. No, that's not
we
true.
Would not. What? We'd have her on a diet? We
have raked over the coals any presidential candidate that has something that's going on. McCain, we talked about his age. Because I think the United States president, I don't want Obama telling me about smoking. We got him with smoking too. Anybody who represents his country.
Let me just make one point. The last fat president that we had was President Taft. Years and years ago, I remember him. I dated him. They They had to make a special bathtub for him because he was too fat to get in it. Okay? I don't think the country's ready for a fat president again.
I think that's ridiculous.
Okay, good.
Well, and also,
because he's fat.
Let me finish. I think that is ridiculous. That has nothing to do with his brain. It has nothing to do with his experience. Wait, I will make a... We don't know about his lifespan.
I'm saying, but no,
let me just make my prediction.
Okay.
I predict that he will be the Republican candidate.
I hope the hell not.
Really?
I hope the hell not. Now, wait a minute. Because I'm in his state, okay? I don't know. I like the man that nobody's paying any attention to. The gentleman that's coming on with us, Huntsman. If I'm going to go Republican, that's the guy.
No for Chris Christie.
I'm going to tell you, because I live in his state, and I see what he's done. And I'm sorry, if this is what they have to offer, I'm not buying it. He hasn't done jack.
Well, he's trimmed the budget.
This is the guy that said, oh, okay. You know, both him and Cuomo, who I'm a little pissed off at, raised the tolls on people who can't afford to drive, okay? And not one of them, neither of these guys said, you know what? Our people are so raked over the coals. You know what? We're going to stand behind that.
Most of the people in New Jersey like him as governor.
I don't know who...
This is a New Jersey crowd.
Governor Christie, come on our program. The Vice President of the United States will come on, and we're happy he's going to be here. Governor Christie, come on our program and talk Whoopi out of it.
Yeah, right.
We have a scale waiting for you.
It might be fun to have a...
I think it's ridiculous.
What did you say?
I said we will have a scale waiting for you.
You know what? I'd like to say that it might be fun.
It
might be fun to have a fat president, you know? I mean, his motto could be no more vetoes, only Cheetos. Yay!
There you go. He said it's terrible. What are you getting mad at? The man is overweight.
I'm not.
Nobody's being mean to him by saying he's fat. He's overweight.
No,
it's not being mean.
We would never do this to a woman, and we would attack someone for doing it for a woman.
He's a man.
Yes, we would. He's not healthy. I don't want to have to worry about my president dying from a heart attack because he's overweight.
What about smoking? What about years of smoking?
I'm worried about Obama smoking too. I wish he would stop.
Not to vote for him?
No, not to vote for him because I believe in what he's doing. I don't know about Christie yet. I gotta learn about it.
So then, but you're already putting up the defense.
I don't know what's going on.
I have never heard as much of the... Happy
birthday, Barbara.
Happy birthday.
I don't know whether this is us at our best or our worst. But let me say something that we can agree on. I'm exhausted.
President Biden's coming out.
There is Whoopi. My darling Whoopi got a special award, which she has not talked about, given to her by Mike Nichols, who discovered you in the 80s, put you on Broadway. The rest is history. Tell us about the award.
It was from the casting directors, from the Casting Society of America, a really great group of people. And they gave me the New York Apple Award, which is a recognition of somebody who made a special commitment to the New York entertainment industry through casting.
Congratulations. One of the people pictured, Patina.
The picture was Mike Nichols and Patina Miller, who is the star of Sister Act, which is the show that I produce. If you have not seen it, we are running. It is great. It is not the movie. Go see it. We'll be right back with Vice President Joe Biden.
Job isn't stressful enough already. Vice President Joe Biden is going to be even busier as the 2012 election heats up. So we are honored that he found time in his schedule to sit down with us today, the third time he's been with us. Please welcome back to The View the Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden. and trim after you just heard us bashing that poor governor of New Jersey. You look great.
No comment.
You don't have to make
Actually, Christie's a good guy. Christie's a fellow University of Delaware graduate and a phenomenal football fan. He comes to all our home games.
Are you a Republican or a Democrat? What are you doing here?
I like him.
You could like him. You still don't want him to be president.
No, that's true.
You think
That's true.
You think he'd be a good candidate since you brought it up?
Well, you know, New Jersey's a big, important state. He's at the top of his game right now, and our Republican friends seem to be sort of.
What do you think of Michelle Bachmann, Rick Perry? Who else is there? Romney?
Huntsman. Yeah.
What do you think of them?
Well, look, I think all of them, with maybe the exception of Huntsman, have the same sort of value set. They think that the way to move the country forward is in a fundamentally different way than we think to move it forward. So I don't see a lot of difference in terms of, like, for example, Social Security. You know, they're beating up Perry for saying it's a Ponzi scheme, but yet everyone else on that stage wants to privatize it. So, you know, I don't see much difference. And the question is, you know, whomever the nominee is, I think there's going to be stark choices between the president and me and whomever their nominees are in terms of, you know, our
what did you have to ask you? What did you think of the booing that went on the other day about the gay soldier? Did you have a visceral response to it?
I did have a visceral response. I'm not sure it's because my son spent a year in Iraq, and I know my son and all the kids with him, kids, they're grown men. I don't think they give a damn whether a guy firing a rifle to protect them is gay or straight. I don't think they care about that. And look, this kid risked his life. This kid is there for a year. And I, quite frankly, I thought it was reprehensible.
Right, and no one spoke up. That entire panel, not one person said anything.
Can I move on, because I know this is a very emotional subject for you. Right off the bat, you will be the vice presidential candidate again next year?
I haven't figured out how not to be. No, yes.
So the answer is yes.
No, the answer is yes.
Okay.
The answer is yes.
Okay, good. Now, we had former Vice President Dick Cheney on with us last week, and he was very close to President Bush. He was involved in nearly every decision. And one of the criticisms, you know, Mr. Vice President, is that our president doesn't really listen to anybody, even people in his inner circle. Does he listen to you? And can you give us an example of where your opinion might have...
You're talking about Obama. I thought you were talking about Bush.
No, I'm talking about Obama. Okay. No, I said our president now. Our president now is Obama.
Gotcha.
Okay.
There are a number of instances, but, you know, it would be inappropriate for me. Look, the deal. When the president and I agreed that I'd be on the ticket, he asked me, and I agreed to be on the ticket. The one thing that I asked, and he's kept it, this promise, was that I'd be the last guy in the room, literally the last person in the room in every major decision. And I can tell you without fear of contradiction that he seeks opinions from everyone and in his inner circle. And I have a bad reputation for being very blunt, straight. And I have made clear to the president my views, and on 85% of what he's asked me for his opinion on, we've agreed. So I find a guy who, look, I've been there for 8 presidents. There's only 2 that I knew who seemed totally prepared to listen to an alternative view. And if you made the better case, they'd say, well, okay, I understand that. And he's one of those guys. Now, it would be inappropriate for me in private discussion with the president telling you how I may or may not have impacted his view on Afghanistan or on the jobs bill or on whatever. But I promise you.
Yeah, it's kind of pick on the president. It's getting, you know, that's the time.
There's a book. All right. The book called is Confidence Men. You know the book? I have to follow up.
Yeah.
Because this book claims that there's sexism in the White House, that people are saying that they're worried about his leadership. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't know who they're talking to. Look, obviously they didn't talk to Michelle Obama or Joe Biden.
Right.
Because if there's sexism in the White House, the person engaging in it is in trouble. struggle. But look, I'm not suggesting that there's not some instance where a staffer thought that they were not treated well. But look at the high-ranking on my staff, on the president's staff. You know, 70% of the high-ranking people on my staff, from my communications director, my policy advisor, you know, they're all women. And I literally, when this came out, I asked them. Have they seen it? And nobody is aware. And by the way, that quote was, but for the president. I don't get that. I mean, I look at the people around the president, and I don't see any of it.
Okay.
I saw you
really
went to put your hand on Joy's leg, but you took it off. You'd stop.
Anytime I want to be
Our next hot topic.
My leg is your leg.
My leg didn't look as good as your leg.
Leave it alone.
The vice president is going to stay with us because, not just because we wanted to get his political opinion, but he's doing something extremely valuable for the young women in this nation, and we want to talk about it. Stay with us. We'll be right back with the vice president.
Vice President Joe Biden.
Lovely Vice President.
I like him. I like him.
I told you, what did I tell you when you came in? You're my favorite Democrat?
You did.
I think you're everybody's favorite Democrat. But, so this is the 17th anniversary of the Violence Against Women Act, and you've been involved with this for many, many years, for over 20 years. Why did this become so important to you?
You know, it's the single most significant thing I've ever done in my life. I was raised by a dad who talked about the cardinal sin of all sins was the abuse of power. I mean, literally. And he would talk about it. And the most serious abuse of that power is a man to raise his fist to a child or a woman or someone smaller than he is. He can physically dominate. And it's just cowardice. And we were raised that we were to intervene. We were to, if we saw it, we were to say something. We were to literally step in the middle. I mean, that was my dad. And my dad was a gentle, gentle man. And so when I got in the United States Senate, I was on the Judiciary Committee, and I was supposedly, sounds self-serving, the expert on violent crime in America. I spent hundreds of hours of hearings. And when violent crime was really rising, especially when crack cocaine hit the screen in the 70s and early 80s, I held a series of hearings, and there was a startling figure that came out. That violent crime against young men between ages of 16 and 30 actually dropped. But among women, it went up considerably. And I couldn't understand why. And I started holding hearings, and one thing led to another. And so I introduced this legislation called the Violence Against Women Act. But
so what did it do? I mean, how did it change things?
It did a number of things. First of all, it gets you to the end. Domestic violence in America is down violence against women is down 50% since the passage of the Violence Against Women Act. Wow. 50%. But what it changed things, it empowered a lot of young women. I was talking with one of your folks backstage saying, you know, when I was young, it was something we didn't talk about. If your boyfriend slapped you, if your husband banged you around, if you walked in to work with a black guy, so I ran into the door. Yeah. Because it was viewed as not only something that was done to you, women were made, the cultural norm was women were made to feel badly about it. Yeah. I remember there was this really lovely young woman, and her name was Marla. She was a model here in New York City.
I remember that.
Marla Hanson. Yeah. And so I had her come and talk to me, and then I had her testify. And the most startling thing wasn't that this thug, her landlord, hired two guys to slash her face because she wouldn't go out with them. But I asked her, I said, what was the response you got from your women friends? And the response was, well, why were you there? Yeah. Why were you in that bar? The bar was by the way, in the basement, on the first floor of her hotel. So women have culturally in this country been viewed to, I must have done something wrong. I want to make it clear. Never, 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 never does a man have a right to raise his hand to a woman other than self-defense? Never. Never.
Mr. Vice President, now you want to do something very important for young women, particularly between the ages of 16 and 24, because you say the highest examples of rape and sexual assault for these women. What is it that
16 to 24.
What are you trying to do to pass a law?
Very, very briefly. All violence against women has gone down in every age category. The one that's been the most stubborn and is the highest now is 16 to 24. Girls in high school and women in college. And so what we're trying to do is take advantage of all the new technology, all the new fora, all the new capabilities we have to empower these young women to understand that there's a way out. We've learned that peer-to-peer help is the most often sought. So I'm not likely, your daughter, God forbid, if it happened, is not as likely to go to mom as she is to her best friend.
Right.
And if she's going to tell even her best friend, she'd rather text it to her than tell it to her. Because so what we've done is we have, I've gotten over 100 university presidents together, telling them and we've changed the rule. Title IX, everybody thinks that Title IX, women's sports, was much beyond women's sports. We say, hey, look, if the college isn't going out of their way to make it safer for women to be on that campus, they can be held in violation of Title IX and lose their money.
Accountability.
Exactly
what we need.
And by the way, the other piece of this is colleges, for example, in those early hearings I held, I had a college counselor, saying to a young woman who'd just been raped, now look, what you got to do is you got to keep your grades up so you can transfer. Instead of putting by the way, this is there is a cultural norm that we still haven't completely broken down that somehow, for example, Barbara, I told you about, and thank you for doing this. I contacted Barbara a while ago and asked about this. I told you about this study that was done just recently. And sixth graders, and they were asked the question, is it all right for a boyfriend to slap his girlfriend if he's angry with her? And the answer was 24% said yeah. It's all right to do that.
24%.
24%.
And now, too, you see internet, use, there's young men are using internet photos, et cetera, to actually pull acts from women, use them to bully them into committing to sex, blackmailing them, threatening them. So that's another whole aspect we're getting into. We do want to thank you. One more question before we go up?
And will you just also remind the women that the way to get a man's attention is not to hit him. Do not hit him because this is something, violence in itself is something we need to teach kids not to perpetrate on each other, no?
Look, it's, of all the violent criminals behind bars in jail, they only have two things in common. One is they can't read, and two is that they witnessed their mother or someone in their household being beaten by their father, and then they repeat the act. You'd think it'd be the opposite. You'd think, but it's a learned behavior. It's a learned behavior.
This is a wonderful campaign. We are so thankful that Vice President Joe Biden is going to stick around. And when we come back, we'll talk to two of the women whose lives were changed forever because of violent relationships. Thank you.
President Joe Biden, as a Delaware senator 17 years ago, he helped create the Violence Against Women Act, and he is now joined by women whose lives were impacted by shocking abuse, and they're on a mission to stop the alarming rise in teen girls who are in violent relationships. Please welcome Joanna Orozco and Ann Burke. Hi, welcome, Joanna. Welcome, Ann. So, Joanna, we'll start with you. We're going to go back a little bit. 4 years ago, you were 18 years old. You broke up with your boyfriend, Juan, after a 2-year relationship. So after you broke up with Juan, he repeatedly harassed you. He stalked you. Then he raped you at knife point.
Yes.
And then after he raped you, he then came and he shot you in the face.
Yes.
What do you remember about that day of all that?
I really don't remember much. It's all a blur of what happened that day. I remember waking up to my grandmother. She was screaming and crying. And I remember some of the drive to the hospital. But I remember going to the hospital, and it was loud. I felt everyone around me. Then a nurse came, and she held my hand, and she told me that I was going to be okay, that they were going to put me to sleep. And the last thing I remember telling her was that I didn't want to die.
Well, I'm even going to go back a little bit. After, and I want to get this right, after Juan raped you, you did everything you were supposed to do. You went, you told some friends. The friends told you to go tell a teacher. The teacher told the principal. The principal called the police. Mm-hmm. So after this, you would think that he would be arrested, gone. But he was arrested. I want to know, how the heck did he end up being able to come back and shoot you in the face when you did everything you were supposed to do?
Okay, well, after I reported it, 4 days later, he was let out on house arrest.
On house arrest after he raped you?
Yes, that's all he got. And the reason was because the detention center was overcrowded and they couldn't make room for him.
I want to talk about now, because you had 12 operations?
Yes.
Yes. And I just want to tell people that you are now engaged, yes?
Yes, I'm engaged.
Yeah. To a young man in our armed services?
Yes, he's in the military. He's in the Army. He's a great man.
I think you're very beautiful, and I'll bet he thinks so, too.
Of course, and I think so, too.
What you're trying to do, Joanna, is to take this terrible experience and try to do something so that other young women may not be exposed to this. And you have, as I understand it, 2 laws that you're trying to get into different schools, because you're now a teen educator, are you not?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm a teen educator.
So tell us what these laws are that you want to have passed.
Actually, they have passed.
They have passed?
Yes, in the state of Ohio. House Bill 19, which is now called the Tina's Law, is where now in schools from grades 7 to 12, teachers or someone has to come in and educate their students about what teen dating violence is and how to get the resources and how to get out of it.
Yeah.
Then House Bill 10 is called Shanira's Law, which is now teens from ages 13 to 18, now they are able to get protection orders, something I couldn't get.
Why couldn't you get that?
They didn't have it because he was a juvenile still, and that wasn't a law by the time I was there.
I want to turn to you, Anne, because your story is just so heartbreaking. Your daughter, Lindsay, was just 23 years old when she was murdered by her ex-boyfriend. This was 6 years ago. He's now serving a life sentence in prison without the possibility of parole. But since her death, you've tried to find something positive about it, and you've pushed for teen violence education nationwide. Tell us what you've tried to do, Anne.
I have. Being a health teacher for many years really guided my thinking on that. It was difficult for me to go back into class and teach my students about heart disease and obesity, about many of the other things, teen pregnancy, STDs, when I knew the statistics showed that they were more likely to become a victim of teen violence. And I just felt that that didn't make sense to me, especially when HIV was mandated, that we teach about it, why not dating violence. And so we passed the Lindsay Ann Burke Act in Rhode Island.
Which does?
In 2007. That requires education, grades 7 through 12 through the health curriculum, requires that all teachers at the secondary level are trained, and dating violence policies in school. And in fact, the Tina Croucher Act is based on Lindsay's Act. We've teamed up with Liz Claiborne when my husband and I co-founded the Love Is Not Abuse Coalition, which is a grassroots effort that works with the National Foundation of Women Legislators, the National Association of Attorneys General, and we push for these laws in all states.
And you have, I just want to say that the Vice President is with us because we know about the 2 of you from the Vice President, who talks the talk, and walks the walk.
I want to ask, I want to ask Anne this, because you mentioned that you were a teacher for health. You taught health for 8th graders. but yet you say that you miss the signs of abuse in your daughter's life, which I think there's a lot of people in the audience who we don't know what's going on with the young kids today. What are some of the signs of abuse in a young woman's life? Because she doesn't just come and say, auntie or mom, somebody's hitting me.
Absolutely, and I didn't know either, even though I was a health teacher. I was at a loss because I'd never been educated about it, and I'd be willing to bet that most parents are uneducated about it. So I would say to parents, number one, please educate yourselves. There are many warning signs, but one of the most obvious is when the partner texts or calls numerous times a day and the victim has to answer the phone. There is a lot of controlling behavior, a lot of extreme jealousy, even jealousy of the time spent with friends and family. And
it's not puppy love.
Did you see any of that? Did you see any of that?
I saw a little bit of it. I saw the numerous phone calls and strange behavior. There's a strange psychological bond that starts to form.
Joanna's nodding. You
Yes.
had this happen to you.
Oh, yes. Yes, not only that, you know, the controlling, telling you what to wear. You know, your time is always with him and him only.
Joanna, what do you say to young girls? Because I know a lot of young girls say, oh, he just loves me. It's not controlling. He doesn't want me to be with anybody else. He cares. What do you say to girls when they say that about their boyfriends? Because they think it's cute.
I personally say, well, I was in that position. I thought it was cute. But in reality, it isn't. Because it just turns out that you feel miserable. You are trapped, and you don't want to be in that.
But if you go to the police, they'll say, well, we can't, he hasn't done anything. So you are hoping that these acts of education in school will make the difference before the violence attacks? Is that it?
Absolutely. I know they work. I've heard from many of my former students and other health teachers in Rhode Island of incidents where it's helped. I've heard from school administrators who say the education helps them to deal with it.
Yeah.
We need to have it in all
I've got to pause now. We thank you all, Mr. Vice President. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
We hope that you people will profit from listening to this. We will be right back. Whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, this was an important day with an important message. And we're very happy to have had the Vice President with us. And
those families were amazing.
We're
extraordinary.
They're going to stay in touch with us. Enjoy the view, everybody. Enjoy the view.